This video is a joint effort between all of the Arch, a creative group I'm a part of, because we all hated Goblin Slayer. We literally got to the 15-minute mark and looked at one another and said outright, we just didn't want to keep watching. There are different kinds of hate in this world. My favorite is the reviewer hate, where it's fun to point out the shortcomings and brokenness of a work like Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, which I will also make a video on. Then there's the holy terror hate. The kind of hate where you are appalled by something to where it's not even entertaining for you to complain about it. You're just angry and ultimately sad that it exists. And that's what this show is for me.
Most of you are probably now aware that this show has visceral scenes of rape and the kind of flashback-inducing presentation that people who were on the fence before about the concept of trigger warnings might find persuasive. There are definitely more graphic depictions out there, but this show captures the feeling of the brutality. And flashback-inducing is literal, by the way. One of the archers that doesn't want to record their voice for this video is a rape survivor that was pretty affected by this scene. So anybody typing a comment right now about how we're being too sensitive doesn't have a leg to stand on. Oh yeah, and while we're on that note, let's take a look at that Mal page. A young priestess has formed her first adventuring party, but almost immediately they find themselves in distress. It's the Goblin Slayer who comes to their rescue, a man who's dedicated his life to the extermination of all goblins, by any means necessary. And when rumors of his feats begin to circulate, there's no telling what might come next. Look at this. Does this scream full of rape to you? It looks like it's this season's Is It Wrong to Pick Up on Girls in a Dungeon? I guess you're just supposed to know, huh?
Lots of defenders of media like this like to say things like, if you don't like it, don't look. Or, why did you keep watching it then? We didn't keep watching it, and we never would have started if we knew what was in it, but too late, damage done.
What really underlies the gratuity is how cheap it is. The characters don't have names or backstories, they aren't even really characters. They're just victims of the author that we're made to watch suffer. It showed that they're unprepared for this adventure with the lack of potions and the sword catching on the ceiling, but does that mean that the narrative is really trying to suggest that they deserve it? Eat a thumbtack! I'm not against dark stories, but there's no substance here. There's a 2011 film called Immortals that this show brings to mind. As far as I remember, there's no rape in it, but there's so much pain that it killed my interest in the story. I don't want any part of its world of horrible things happening constantly forever, and it's the same here. When you build no investment and then get that dark, it breaks the fiction. I'm not mad at the villain, I'm mad at the author, the studio, and the mal description. Mediocre writing and dark can make atmosphere or pathos, but bad and dark gives you metaphor sheer.
The goblins are bad, and the show wants us to hate them, but we already have no reason to love them. Anyone versed in fantasy tropes will already see goblins as vermin that steal and destroy. We don't need to watch them gang rape someone to be on board with killing them. It's supposed to make it cathartic when the title character shows up and wipes them out, but instead it just leaves me thinking, why did this have to happen? Why did I even have to imagine it?
Goblin Slayer, both the character and the series, are explicitly based on characters like the Punisher, according to the author, but this misses part of the point of the Punisher. The enemies he kills are all humans who could be redeemed, at least in theory, and at the end of the day, even if he succeeds, there's still one killer left. Frank Castle himself. And he knows it too, having killed himself at the end of a few different stories. All of that intrigue goes away when the character is fully justified in any action he takes because the goblins are stipulated to be evil as a species.
The show even brings up whether you should kill goblin babies or not, but there's no moral issue here since we already established that they're irredeemably evil as a species, which the series immediately concludes as well.
The story is written so that the only rational response to the goblins is genocide, and I wonder if in a meta sense that may have been part of the point. It acclimates you to the idea that genocide is a reasonable solution, so it seems more appealing as a solution to future problems. Looking back, the quest giver clerk that mumbled to herself and barely tried to stop the party is negligent to the point of villainy. All you have to say is, maybe wait for some higher level adventurers? I did some reading around and apparently high level adventurers ignore goblins because they're high risk, low reward, so they send newbies at them in 2 or 3 waves until the problem is resolved. That makes the clerk even worse, feeding brand new adventurers to the grinder on the reg.
And the fact revealed later on that adventurers are ignoring goblins to the point where they become an existential threat to humanity means that it breaks the fiction a second time. The severity of this threat should be common knowledge, so the adventurers should never have been able to be so flippant about fighting goblins unless none of them knew anything whatsoever about the world they live in.
Reading the feedback from fans of this show on the Pedantic Romantics video on Goblin Slayer or the responses on Twitter underlines what I think is one of the worst parts of human nature. They reject the conclusion, and because of that they discard the reasoning regardless of its content. They purposefully take the least charitable interpretation of what's being said, even if it's specifically called out as not being what was meant, because they don't want to consider it. Someone said something bad about something they like, meaning that that person said they were bad for liking it, and now they need to take that person down.
Well, I'll make it explicit then. If you actually like this trash, you're a tasteless, low-effort plebeian slackjaw and a bad person.
Whoa, hang on.
Yeah, we don't actually think that liking bad art makes you a bad person.
Well, I do. Competence is a virtue and so is taste. Go count the grass, you NPCs.
Anything can be good if it's done well. A species that reproduces exclusively by rape is the premise of Alien, as well as any lore-accurate depiction of Nephilim. Making bad things good is the reason old musicals get updates in recent versions or adaptations.
But this isn't a good show, and every part of it was done horribly. How do you defend it?
It's to make you hate the goblins.
We don't need a reason to approve of killing them. They aren't cuddly animals.
It raises interesting moral questions about when it's okay to kill.
It's not a question if every part of the story is contrived to make killing them the only justifiable option.
The priestess even asks, what if there are good goblins?
All goblins are evil. That's part of the setting. The only reason they ask is because it's exposition to tell you that all goblins are evil.
I like it for the tactics later on.
The story fails if I hate it enough to drop it before it gets to that part in the first episode.
You don't have to watch it.
I wouldn't have if I knew what it was.
Grow thicker skin.
One of our group is a rape survivor. Besides, it shouldn't bother you isn't a defense.
SJW.
If not wanting to watch someone get gang raped makes you an SJW, I'll just have to make peace with the burden of that label. Do you even watch this channel? Reviews keep telling people who complain about this to take the show for what it is. Well, that is what I'm doing. This show is like taking the complaints about Game of Thrones and its use of rape, but doing it for real. Just rape everywhere. And we get to watch it under the guise of the show being dark just for reminding us that such disgusting acts happen for really no other reason than to show goblins are evil, yo! It revels in the gotcha of the moment and then tries to pretend to be deep by asking if it's wrong to kill creatures who have only been shown to be the worst. There's no disclaimers anywhere about the rapes or how much detail they go into. I can't speak for how it aired in Japan, but on Crunchyroll, there is no warning. Not all of us are familiar with the original light novel or manga. I just read the description, thought it seemed fine, and suddenly found myself in the midst of some very messed up imagery. This is seriously harmful for those who have experienced sexual assault. I wasn't expecting perfection from Goblin Slayer. Frankly, I thought the show was going to be middling at best going in. It looked like the kind of schlock that would be popular like Bunny Girl Senpai, even though it didn't deserve it. The only reason it isn't #1 right now is because it's going up against Sword Art Online. And I was kinda right, but it's of a different trash than Bunny Girl. Thank you very much for consuming this video. If you'd like to talk to me about just about anything, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. You can find me at NotAVampyre. Thank you very much again, and until next time.